For Regina, Lewvan.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Public Services appeared before committee to discuss the Phoenix boondoggle. The minister was very clear about one thing. It's not her fault. She tried to blame the previous government, her own officials, and pay centre employees. Anyone but her. And today, the entire Phoenix pay system crashed. My question is simple. Whose fault is it this time? When will this minister take responsibility, and when will she ensure that all federal workers are properly paid?
The Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is committed to a secure, reliable, and modern IT system. We are working really hard to fix the issues around Phoenix. Our priority is to make sure that employees who work get paid for the work performed. That is what we're doing. We're working very hard to do that. We are not blaming employees who are working hard on this file. We have employees who are working to make sure that other employees get paid. So that's where the focus is making sure that people get paid for work performed.
Mr. Weir for 7 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Minister, last time you appeared before this committee, I asked about the Phoenix pay system, and you indicated that there were only 77 unresolved cases. Now, after Parliament adjourned, the government acknowledged that there were 80,000 employees who had been paid incorrectly, but promised that that would be rectified by the end of October. You've repeated that date today, but it strikes me that with 67,500 outstanding cases, that the government's not actually on track to resolve that backlog by the end of October. So I wonder if you could just speak to that timeline of going from 80,000 in July to 67,000 in September to having it resolved by October.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. And I am as on top of this as you expect me to be and want me to be, and asking the same questions, because I need the assurance, and the employees who are going without pay need the assurance that they are going to be compensated for work performed. So there's not a day goes by when that question doesn't get asked. Are we going to meet the October 31st deadline? I ask that question of the Deputy Minister. I ask that question of anybody who has anything to do with the Phoenix system. And I am told that based on the number of additional employees we have hired, looking at the number of employees who are getting paid as a result of the additional employees having been hired, looking at the efficiencies that are being realized in Miramichi as employees become much more familiar with the system, I am being told that that October 31st deadline is a real deadline. We are talking about the backlog, and you understand that, because I think there was some concern.
So you have confidence that the 67,500 cases that are the current backlog will be resolved by the end of October? Not just that you're being told that, you yourself believe that deadline.
I have no reason not to believe it based on the information that I've been given and the work that's being done in the department. So I'm every day at the same thing, not just because I want the backlog cleared up, I want employees to get paid for work performed.
Okay. Now, Madam Minister, you've made the point that the Phoenix pay system was a flawed plan inherited from the previous government, but in the end it was your government that rushed ahead with implementing that flawed plan despite repeated warnings that the system was not ready. Now, one possibility is that the implementation was rushed so that senior officials could meet deadlines to qualify for performance bonuses. I think you've indicated that performance bonuses will not be paid out this year, but I just want to clarify whether top officials who implemented Phoenix might have accrued bonuses that could be paid out at a later date.
Thank you for the question, but I have to tell you that my mind has not been focused at all on performance bonuses. That is not where I am when it comes to dealing with this file. And we are determined to fix a broken system, a system that, while we inherited it, and I repeat again, it's mine to fix. So I'm not prepared to say we rushed into it, because I know that I repeatedly asked questions, but the reality is that when asked the question, if we could go back, could we go back to the other system? I was told no, because of course you had these 700 compensation advisors who had been let go, you had systems that had been changed, and there was no going back. I asked the question, can we go back?
When you suggest that it wouldn't have been possible to maintain the previous system for a bit longer while these bugs in Phoenix were worked out, are you suggesting that if the government had not gone ahead with implementing Phase 2 of Phoenix, that more than 80,000 federal employees would have been paid incorrectly as a result?
No, what I'm telling you is that when I asked the question whether or not we could run two systems, and I was told no, that would not work. We could not run two systems. We have Phoenix. People are being trained on Phoenix. The system is there, and there was no going back. All of those questions, believe me, were asked when we looked at whether or not.
Okay, but it's not a question of going back. It's a question of, just slowing things down and maintaining the system that was in place. And I think a lot of people, including people in the federal public service, recommended that, and yet your government barreled ahead with the implementation of Phoenix, which has been a disaster. So on the one hand, you're acknowledging the problem, but on the other hand, you still seem to be suggesting that it was the right decision to go ahead with implementing Phase 2 of Phoenix.
I was told that we could not run both systems simultaneously.
Okay, so is the person who told you that going to have some accountability?
Well, the buck stops with me. I'm the minister responsible,
okay,
and I'm the one who has to fix the system working with the department. So it doesn't matter who told me what, but the reality is that all of those questions were asked, and what we have to do now is fix the system so there are no public service employees going without pay for time worked.
Okay, so there's been some questions about the cost of cleaning up the Phoenix mess, and I'm not sure we really have a final tally of what all these pay centers, compensation to employees, lawsuits are going to cost, but there was a figure of $50 million put out, and that included an additional $6 million to IBM for 24/7 monitoring of Phoenix. And I guess what I'm wondering is, what obligations did IBM have under the original contract? And I mean, why are we now paying IBM more money rather than perhaps expecting IBM to compensate taxpayers for its role in this boondoggle?
A very brief answer, if that's possible.
What IBM is being paid to do now was not part of their original contract, in terms of they would not have been paid for that because it's something new. Gavin, am I right on that?
Sure. That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Weir.
Okay, well, thank you. In the previous round, you said a couple of times that there was no going back to the previous system, but of course, for several months, from February to April, the two systems did function concurrently. And I'm wondering why it wasn't possible to just continue that for a few more weeks or months until these glitches in Phoenix were sorted out.
I was told there was no going back. I was told because we had moved on to different systems and we were gradually moving into Phoenix 100%. As well, the fact that, in terms of moving to a new system, you had fewer compensation advisors because they had been let go and people had been put into other jobs, so you couldn't bring them back to do it. So there are any number of reasons that I was given to why we had to move full steam ahead. But again, it was with the understanding that we were ready to do so.
Now, we focused a lot on the backlog of Priority 3 cases, and I guess I would ask, since that 80,000 figure was reported in July, how many new Priority 3 cases have emerged?
So Priority 3 is, as you say, the backlog of 82,000 people. Now I'm going to use that word now. 82,000 people. So as I said earlier, we do have incoming transactions that are dealt by Miramichi, and they are dealt not at the pace that we hope they will when we are fully fully operational and have reached our steady state. So we are not meeting our service standards in every cases. We are, in some cases, being processed. So there's no backlog as such. It's just we are not meeting our service standards. And the minute we're done with the backlog, the 82,000 cases, the satellite unit compensation advisors will help Miramichi to get us to that steady state.
Okay, but could you quantify that failure to meet service standards? Like how many more people are getting paid incorrectly than the original 80,000 that's being whittled down?
So they're not being paid incorrectly. They're not being paid at the right time. Like there's a time of service standard. So in some cases we're not meeting the time, which we will as soon as we get to our steady state.
Payday for some 300,000 federal workers, but more than 57,000 of them are still having trouble with their pay. Today, federal officials provided an update on efforts to clear up the backlog. That's just as a new report obtained by CBC News shows that there were some pretty big warnings about the new Phoenix pay system before it was brought online. The minister in charge, Judy Foote, says that she was never briefed on it. So who is to blame for the Phoenix system failings, and how much will it cost now to clean up the mess? Joining me now in studio, Lewvan MP. She is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Services and Procurement. First time on the show, I believe, so welcome. Kelly McCauley is the Conservative Public Services and Procurement Critic. Also first time on the show.
First time.
All right, welcome. And Erin Weir, not your first time, but you are still welcome. The NDP Public Services and Procurement Critic. Good to see you all. So I'll start with you, Lewvan MP. From what we know then, there was a report that said, hey, we might want to be careful about this. It might not work as well as possible. Why did no one slow down the implementation of the system if there were warnings?
Well, we were certainly aware that there were concerns, but at the same time, it's a large systems implementation. In any system of that complexity, there's going to be concerns. And at the time, we were told that those concerns had been mitigated, and the department assured us that we needed to proceed.
It's a bit weird to me that the minister didn't see that report. Why has she asked any questions about why she wasn't briefed about it, or why she didn't get a chance to look at it and sort of make an evaluation on her own?
Well, there's no question that we will be conducting an internal review, and we've asked the Auditor General, the Minister has asked the Auditor General to do a review, but our focus right now is solely on ensuring that people who are not being paid appropriately get the pay that they deserve for the work that they've performed.
Sure, but it would be nice to know what the problems were and why there did seem to be an idea that it wasn't going to go as smoothly as possible, and then the system got implemented anyway. Kelly McCauley, does that worry you that there was an audit done and it said we have some red flags, we have some concerns here?
Yeah, we have a lot of worries, and we've been expressing a lot of these concerns from, since January in committee, both in Treasury Board and Phoenix about the issues. We've been hearing feedback far back as January, the system's not ready.
Yep.
People are not listening to us, and we've been assured, whether it's misled or misinformed along the way, there's no worries, there's just 77 issues, there's just 80,000 issues, it's only 5 million, now it's 50 million. We were never told, now we were told, but only some of us were told, and it's the non-stop process of trying to dig out what the truth is, and we're just trying to figure out what went wrong, and we'd like the government to be upfront with us.
Erin Weir?
Well, yeah, I mean, this report really just validates what we've been saying. It's just a matter of common sense in introducing a new payroll system that you'd keep in place. The previous system was functioning until you knew that the new system was working. The minister has tried to argue that it would have been impractical to operate Phoenix in conjunction with the previous system. But in fact, that's exactly what the Government of Canada was doing from February until April. So you really have to wonder why the government decided to take the old system offline when there were all these warnings and all these problems with Phoenix that were already well known.
Well, I mean, I think the bureaucrats tried to explain that today. Some of the officials, they suggested that if you were going to have to input information into the new system and the old system, they just didn't have the resources to do that. You don't buy that?
Well, no, and I mean, there might have been some additional inconvenience, but I mean, think of the inconvenience that's been imposed on 80,000 federal employees who are not being paid correctly. When that backlog was announced in July, the government was saying that it would all be sorted out by October. We're now well into September, and we've still got about 60,000 people who are being paid incorrectly. So, I mean, one of my questions for the government is when will this actually be fixed?
Okay, well, maybe Lewvan MP can answer that.
We're focused on making sure that we resolve the backlog and get to steady state as soon as we possibly can and make sure that people are getting as much.
So we're still on track to have this dealt with by October?
We're assured that that will be the case. But I think we do need to look at it. It is a complex system, and it was a large project plan. And over 700 people were transitioned before we even went live. And so we couldn't operate two systems at the same time because we just didn't have the manpower. So it's not only about
did operate the
putting
two
them
systems at the
into
same
two
time for
systems,
months.
but only for one paper, one session.
As much as I hate to do it, I'm going to agree with my NDP colleague. We did run it for February, March, April concurrently. We asked repeatedly, can this still happen? No, we can't. We asked in committee, were you warned about this, or could you? We were told, no, we could not.
Yeah.
We're now seeing, yes, you could. We asked as recently as Monday, and we were told, no, you could not possibly continue to do both as a backup.
Again, people were being transitioned, and so there were people being transitioned throughout that period. So the plan was to have X number of people to deal with the phase 1, and then for those people to then transition before the phase 2. So it was all part of a complicated plan, and so if we had not gone live with the second, we wouldn't have had the people to be able to.
So I guess people who are watching this from outside, first of all, they need to realize that the money, the savings that was going to come from the system is basically gone. It's almost gone because you've had to use the money to fix the system. Is anyone going to be held accountable for it, whether it be deputy ministers or bureaucrats or anybody who said we were ready to go and in fact they weren't ready to go and the training wasn't there for people and maybe it shouldn't have happened? I mean, there are accountability questions here.
For sure.
Yeah.
But now is not the time to be asking those questions because now is the time to make sure that people who don't have their pay get paid. Then we'll do an internal review, and we've asked the Auditor General to do a review, and by that time
can you not be asking those questions and paying people at the same time? Why can that not be happening?
It doesn't look like the government can multitask. Clearly, we asked this in an emergency meeting. I mean, all these people affected, 80,000 people, and this at the time it was $25 million taxpayers' money, squandered because of this program being implemented wrong. Who's going to be responsible? Oh, that's for another time. Monday, are you still going to pay bonuses to these people responsible for now $50 million in losses on top of the incredible misery inflicted upon 80 to 100 public servants? That's for another time. It's not for another time. It's for now when the minister has to step up and say, someone is accountable, and we're not going to pay a penny in taxpayers' money in bonuses for this.
I would just add that the accountability questions are really connected to our understanding of what happened and what went wrong. I mean, there's a sense that one of the reasons the Liberal government may have rushed the implementation of Phoenix was to meet deadlines so that certain senior officials could qualify for those performance bonuses that Kelly mentioned. So, it's a real boondoggle, and in understanding what happened, we really do need to, hold those responsible to account.
And we don't have the evidence to support that at this time.
About the bonus.
The minister sure wasn't clear.
We have the evidence. It probably hasn't been shared with the minister as the reports, and this is what we're finding bit by bit by bit. When they're caught, we didn't tell the minister. Okay. And it's again and again, it's becoming a trust issue.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Nice to meet all of you, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
We'll have you back.